Have you ever thought that life isn't what it seems? That everything around you might not be quite what you think it is? Everything you know, everyone you love, might just be, according to some people, a computer simulation. Elon Musk himself theorizes this very thing. Are we all living in a computer simulation? Let's talk about it. Hello! Welcome to Brainspill, the laziest show on the internet. My name is Tank, and this truly does sound like the insane ramblings of some tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorist. Which is fine if we're clearly talking about some tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorist, but this is Elon Musk that said this. Yes, entrepreneur and business mogul himself of SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, OpenAI, and The Boring Company. At the time of making this video, he is the richest man on Earth. So, for some of you out there, he is a prime candidate for a tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorist. But I think it's pretty hard to just dismiss a claim like that when it's come from someone like Elon Musk, and it's something that's definitely worth digging into a little bit further. I mean, it's one thing just to say it's the case, but it's another to dig into it and find out why. As I think most people, upon hearing such a statement that we're living in some sort of simulation, sounds absolutely absurd. But to some, it might be a bit more real than you think. The prime source for these comments comes from the Joe Rogan Podcast of all places, episode 1169 of the podcast episodes, where Elon Musk is a guest. Now, I know what you're thinking, the Joe Rogan Podcast of all places. Really? Come on now, is this where you're getting your sources from? And yes, I know that the Joe Rogan Podcast has come under criticism recently, but we have to look at it for what it is. This is where the quotes come from, and this is what we're working with. In addition, this was also the episode where Elon Musk himself was smoking a Fat Doozy on camera, so if he's going to come out with a comment like this, then you might just want to bear that fact in mind before you start listening to what he has to say. So, maybe you think on the one hand he's talking out of his ass. On the other hand, this might have been just what he needed to open up his mind and be able to speak freely about what he truly believes in. Given the position this man's in, what does he know that we don't? Anyway, the conversation in this podcast goes to a point where Elon Musk theorizes about how quickly we as humans have developed and how our technology has made leaps and bounds in just a few years. Maybe a little bit too quickly. The theory first came about after a University of Oxford philosopher published a paper in the year 2003 on this topic. Nick Bostrom outlined that if there were a substantial chance that our civilization will ever get to the post-human stage and run ancestor simulations, then how come you're not living in such a simulation right now? But I hear you ask, how's that possible? I mean, we have feelings, we have emotions, we have senses, we can touch things, we know that the world's around us, everything seems so real. So, how is it possible? Yes, despite the fact that you may think that you have complete free will over your actions, it's entirely possible, according to the theory, that we might reach such a level of technological advancement in the future that we may be able to replicate like-for-like simulations of our ancestors in the past. If we had enough computing power, we could perhaps generate everything in the entire world at one time. Sounds crazy, but hear me out. I can just imagine our overlords looking down now, looking at me talking about the fact that I might be in a simulation, probably laughing at that, and also then deciding to remove the door and watch me inevitably burn to death in the flat. Because I know that if we're going to call this a simulation, then yes, our lives are pretty much just like The Sims. So, to put it simply, any advanced future civilization could, theoretically, have the power to be able to create a simulation that's very much like our existence today. So maybe we're in a simulation right now. This paper is the basis for Elon's thoughts on the matter, and is even quoted as saying the following when asked about the idea of potentially living in a simulation in the future. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, games will eventually be indistinguishable from reality. We're most likely in a simulation. The man was even questioned on this further when he was at a Vox Media conference and was asked the very question to elaborate on the comments he made about the fact that we could be in a simulation. The example that Elon Musk gave was looking back 40 years in the past and seeing that we as humanity had made a video game called Pong, a very simple game when two paddleboards knocked a ball back and forth on a screen. However, 40 years later, he then goes on to comment and say that we have games which are very visually impressive, they're high fidelity, and we can play highly immersive games in a large multiplayer environment with many people around the world. Just 40 years difference, and that has made a complete revolution in the way that we consume media, in particular things like video games. And yes, I know for a fact that with the technology we have now, that MMO Pokemon game is just around the corner. I mean, it must be. Like, 10-year-old me wished that was a thing back in the day, and I know it's possible, and it should be coming. Nintendo, get your stuff together, we want that game. Sorry, I'm getting off topic here. It's easy to say that development in such technology might have stalled in recent years, but if you think about this space of time in the whole of human civilization, this is but a blip in time. And to say how far we've come, where are we going to be as a civilization in 100 years? What about 1,000 years? 10,000 years? I don't know about you, and I'm not saying that we are living in a simulation or anything like that, but I can sort of understand where the theory's coming from. I mean, if you look at some video games today, and you look at, say, a screenshot of a video game, sometimes, in rare cases, it's very possible that you might have seen a screenshot in a video game and not realised it's actually a video game. You might have looked at it and assumed it was a photograph from real life. And from personal experience, things like racing games, for example, are the first things to come to mind. You have in-game graphics, high fidelity, pictures that look like photographs of real cars, but these are actual pictures from in the game, which, when you reach that stage in technology, you start to question where we'll be in the future and whether they'll make things that are photorealistic. Now, imagine that, but 1,000 years in the future. Where would we possibly be? Now, this all might seem a bit doubtful in the fact that if this theory is to be believed and we are in a simulation, what does this mean for purpose and the meaning of life? I ponder that too, but just not when I'm watching the Joe Rogan Podcast. However, something else that Elon says is that it might actually be better if the theory was true. As if there was some calamitous event in the future that erases all human civilization and were to stop the technological advancements we may experience, then maybe we aren't living in a simulation. So maybe for our benefit, we would want this to be the case. In some long-winded, maybe not quite comprehensible argument, you know, something like a tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorist would say. Yes, and on the other hand, some people might look at this and say, well, he's clearly joking. He can't really believe this is the case. Maybe he's joking, maybe he's not. But the fact is, he's mentioned this on multiple occasions and has not really corrected himself, which maybe leads you to believe that he thinks that this could actually be the case, or at least a very real possibility. I mean, if we didn't have such far out there ideas, we would probably have never discovered things such as the fact that it's not the sun that gravitates around the earth, but the other way around. You know, things like that. We'll never know unless someone is truly ready to push the boundaries. Even famous scientist Neil deGrasse Tyson has believed that this could be a simulation, stating that the chances we are in one is better than 50-50 odds. I wish I could summon a strong argument against it, but I can find none. So, with that theory in the wild, many scientists are actually going out of their way to see if they can prove that we're in some sort of a simulation. And my first thought was to see if you can find some sort of glitch in the Matrix or something. Maybe you can stick your arm through a wall when you're not meant to. You never know, it's just like a video game. Look, the reality is, without some solid evidence, no one really knows. Maybe we are, maybe we're not. We're just floating around on some rock that may or may not be digitally generated, and then we'll see what happens. But there is one thing I know for sure, and that is if we are in a simulation, then I am going to pray and hope to whatever higher power is up there, please, give me the infinite money cheat code. I do not want to have to pay simulated rent in my simulated apartment. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to be notified as soon as I upload my next video, be sure to hit the bell button. And if you've got any ideas for what topics you'd like me to discuss next, let me know down in the comments below. As always, sources used in the video will be in the description. What if we were inside a simulation, inside another simulation? I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.